Let's bring you some analysis on those elections in South Africa. Joining me now is Muhamed Nur Nordien. He's a political consultant and strategist in Johannesburg. Muhamed, thank you so much for your time. Of course, the South Africa's 6th democratic elections have concluded. Share with us your reflection on the outcome of this year's election. Any surprises?
Thank you so much for having me. I think if we listen to what President Cyril Ramaphosa just said in the snippet before me, he actually really gave a very accurate comment. And that is, number one, the elections were peaceful. It is our 6th election. And South Africa, interestingly, is what I would call an experimental democracy still. We're only about 25 years old, starting the 6th government, The fact that it has been peaceful, the fact that political parties conducted themselves in a very orderly, peaceful manner and so forth. And we have the testimony of our peers globally. I think it is a positive reflection on South Africa, and it shows, that democracy definitely can work in Africa if nations and peoples decide to put the shoulder to the wheel. It does not mean it's not a difficult path. It does not mean there will be no controversy, and this is how political parties conduct themselves. The journey to these elections and the outcome of the elections has not been easy from a political campaigning perspective, from a social interaction perspective, and so forth. But the proof is in the pudding. We had our elections were peaceful, and they've been successful. And the political parties, of course, have all, at least the most relevant ones, have all accepted the outcomes of the elections and the results. So definitely, it's been very positive.
Let's take a closer look at those top political parties, the performance of the top 3 major parties. Obviously, we know the ANC has lost some support, but interestingly, so did the DA. Tell us more of what you think about the performance of those top 3 parties.
Okay, thank you. So, interestingly enough, the top 3 parties, so the ANC and the DA, both, receded. Whereas the third party, which is the Economic Freedom Fighters, they almost doubled their support. They went from 6% to just over 10%, under 11%. What that shows you is that democracy is maturing. The ANC once upon a time had just above 70%. And if you look over a 25-year period, going from over 70% to just under 60%, I don't think there's anything alarming or anything shocking in there. I think it is just a natural progression of political parties. And of a fledgling democracy, as people have more choices, as different political ideas are infused into society, and as different political ideologies grow, that's exactly what we saw happening here. The Democratic Alliance was a party that started out with around 1.5%, 2% about 20 years ago in the late 90s, and they hit 22% in the last election. And today they're 20%. So it shows, that South African citizens are using the options to choose, to accept you, to reject you. The ANC does not have a complete monopoly on power. Their power is diminishing bit by bit, and they are accepting it. If you look at the Economic Freedom Fighters, who are in a technical way a breakaway from the ANC, and who could be considered a more leftist view of what the ANC has always offered, they doubled their support. So if you take the Economic Freedom Fighters are sitting at around 10%, 11%, and the ANC are 57%, combined, they still make up the majority of parliament, which shows that the ANC with its moderate leftists and the EFF with their more radical leftists still make up the bulk of what South African voters are voting for.
And just taking a closer look at the ANC's performance, are they essentially paying the price for this maturing democracy? They lost a lot of votes. Is there a particular significance to this that we can read into their performance?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the ANC, like any government, being in government, it's not like being in opposition. So when you are in opposition, like the Economic Freedom Fighters or the Democratic Alliance, you basically sit and criticize and so forth. The ANC is a government that has delivered, notwithstanding that the ANC had many shortcomings over the last 6 or 7 years during the presidency of President Jacob Zuma. And there's been a lot of issues of corruption and so forth in South Africa at very senior levels. But what the ANC has been able to do with President Cyril Ramaphosa ascending the position of president of the ANC and of course the next government, is they've been able to reinstate and re-establish faith in the party. So definitely the ANC is paying a price for some of its misconduct. It is also paying the price for being a chief operating officer of South Africa. When you run a country, you'll definitely have shortcomings, you'll definitely have issues, and the opposition does nothing else than just sit and wait for you to make mistakes, and that is how opposition gets into power. And I wouldn't say they're paying the price for democracy. I think the ANC is maturing with democracy, and hence the ANC has to look in the future on issues such as coalition, better penetration into minorities. They have to look better at service delivery and regulation and poverty, and part of the price of democracy and part of the price of having a majority before and losing it is now that there has to be serious introspection, and they will have to work harder to maintain the majority in government as time goes on.
A lot of hard work then in the road ahead for this Ramaphosa-led government. What do you think are going to become the key priority areas in Ramaphosa's term as president?
I would like to start by saying, there's a lot of speculation in media saying that, that the president in his person is under fire within his party and there's no cohesion in the party. I think it's very important to dispel that myth. As an analyst, as someone who's connected and speaking to numerous people at various positions within government, within the ANC, the president is very firm in his position. And this is and the president's position in the party is very important in understanding the future of South Africa, because he has a vision which is called the New Dawn, and that basically looks at investment in the country, it looks at eradicating poverty, it looks at creating jobs. And we should remember there's been a global recession over the last few years, and there are a few examples in Africa where economies have been doing well, but overall, the global economy, especially in African economy, is still relatively sluggish. And South Africa is not immune from global trends and so forth. I think the important thing for South Africa is a reputational issue, that the president is secure, the ANC will abide to its policies, and that the ANC government will be clear on where it is going and what its plan is. That of course gives a lot of comfort to investors. On a local level, a national level, the ANC can do nothing else but continue in its numerous programs of development, education, health, safety, job creation, employment. That is what the ANC will be accountable for. And I think they cannot be lackadaisical as they were in the last 6 or 7 years. Them reaching 57% makes it very, it will be very risky for them to continue the trend of maladministration, corruption, and nepotism and incompetency. That would be disastrous. And I'm certain that President Ramaphosa will definitely tackle all of these issues.
Muhamed Nur Nordien, thank you so much for your analysis, joining us there live from Johannesburg.